Welcome to Kaiser Voices, the story of success, brought to you by Kaiser University Graduate School, here where the academic world meets personal triumph. Join us today as we dive into the captivating tales of success.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Kaiser Voices. We're excited to continue taking a look at the criminal justice industry, but from a slightly different perspective as we look at relevant events happening in the world today. And so joining us on our conversation about drones and the evolving justice landscape is Dr. Anthony Galante. He is one of our criminal justice and homeland security professors here at Kaiser University, but he's also a detective at the Daytona Police Department, a member of the Uncrewed Aircraft System Drone Unit, to put it all together. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Galante.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think I want to start off a little bit by kind of maybe defining exactly what a drone is, because I think we have a basic level of understanding what a drone is, but I think it would be good to kind of just, how do we define a drone? I know we talked about uncrewed aircraft systems. It's what your unit's called specifically with the police department. Is that all a drone is?
So there is an official definition under Federal Aviation Regulation Part 107. I'm not going to get into the details of that because it's a little bit long, but really basically what it says is that, as the term states, uncrewed aircraft system. So it means that the aircraft itself can be controlled without a pilot on board, which would make sense. So it's piloted remotely, usually with a ground control station, either a handheld remote control or a very robust ground control station that can encompass anything from the back of an SUV all the way up to a 52-foot trailer. But there is usually a radio frequency that connects the controller to the aircraft itself. And that aircraft can either be flown by pilot input or it can be flown autonomously with software that's preloaded on it, and that we have seen in contemporary times, specifically in the Russia-Ukraine war that's taken place. We can see drones that are being utilized for nefarious uses in wartime as well. And one of the new things that has a little bit more recent, I wouldn't say within the last 5 years, but within the last year or two, they're now using drones that are connected via fiber optic cable. So the drone will take off and fly, and it's got about 2 kilometers worth of fiber optic cable, and that's connected directly to the ground control station. Reason being that the aircraft does not put out a radio frequency so that it can be intercepted or jammed. So it's a new technology that's constantly emerging to keep the aircraft hidden from those that are looking. And that's one of the things that we can talk about today as well.
So this might sound silly, but I'm serious in my question. A drone is not just in the air, but it could be submerged under water too, or is that point, is it called something different?
So you could have, so instead of uncrewed aircraft systems, it could be uncrewed autonomous systems as well. You could have rovers. In our experience for law enforcement, we actually have devices that have not radar, but sonar that is attached to something that looks like a remote control boat. And what we have found is, especially retention ponds here in the state of Florida, which we have many, I have a colleague that runs his own business with those automated, uncrewed automated boats with the sonar system on them, and it scans the bottom of those retention ponds. And what we have found is our cars that have been abandoned in there. I think the latest case that was closed was about 1976 or 1972. Don't quote me on the date. But it found a car that was missing since 1972. The license plate's still intact. The VIN number is still intact. And the remains of the human were still there as well. And he was able to identify, call law enforcement, have the divers come in and recover the cars. I think up to this date, he has about 60 cars that have been recovered and has solved many, many missing persons cases that are involved with that. So we also have land-based. So there is a dog that is out there that you have seen. And that dog is pretty impressive, can go upstairs, downstairs, it can carry stuff and do all sorts of things. So land, sea, or air, you have autonomous systems or remote control systems that are out there as well for uncrewed systems as well.
Thank you. And those, I think I'm glad you pointed out that there are different versions of what these autonomous units look like. But to kind of get us back on track on our topic, because I think we could go off for a while on sub conversations about their usages and the development of the systems, especially as we progress with technology. But how are drones being used different? How are drones being used today in different areas of the criminal justice? Looking at law enforcement to even emergency responses. I know you kind of mentioned like the submersibles. They found like vehicles looking for them, but how else are they being used?
So there are several different areas that the law enforcement uses uncrewed aircraft systems in. One of the first and foremost is search and rescue. So really, you take a look at the drone, and the first thing I'd like to explain is that really a drone is basically an aircraft, and that is remotely operated. And the most important part about the drone, so you have the aircraft itself, and then you have the payload that's attached to it. And the whole purpose of the drone is to get that payload in an advantageous position to give critical information back to those who are operating it so that they can make informed decisions, critical informed decisions with limited resources that they have. So really a drone is a force multiplier. So if I have 2 or 3 people searching a wooded area, that may take them a couple hours to accomplish that. With a drone, I could probably do that in a couple of minutes with the correct payload in there. So it's a force multiplier. Search and rescue would be an example. We have found people that missing children, missing elderly people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And that's really how in Daytona Beach, our drone program got started under Chief Capri. Back in 2016, it started due to a case of a patient that had either Alzheimer's or dementia, got lost and weren't able to find that person in time. And then with the forward thinking from our chief, he knew that I was involved with drones since 2012. He kindly asked that we start the UAS unit up due to that specific incident for search and rescue. A couple other things that we do here in Daytona Beach, we are a Super Bowl event city. What I mean by that is that we have 8 Super Bowl size events every year. We have approximately anywhere between 1 million and 2 million people, depending on the year, that visit our small city. We only have about 75,000 people, what I call beds and heads, or residents of Daytona Beach, but we can swell all the way up to 300,000 people here during an event. And that's a lot of people. So we need to be able to monitor crowds, traffic management as well, so that we can see backups for that as well. So those are 2 other ways that we can utilize drones. One of the other key things that we can do with it is traffic accident documentation. So if you have an accident and there is potential for death there, we can take the drone and launch the drone. And then we can do what we call a 3D orthomosaic. We basically take a scan of the crash itself. And we can probably accomplish that, depending on the size of it, in about 12 to 15 minutes is about average. If the old way of doing it is by shooting it with lasers, so the motor officers would come up, they would have a special team comes up, a traffic fatality investigator comes up, and they have these long poles, and then they shoot the scene using via dots. That would take probably about 2 hours to 3 hours to complete, depending on the complexity of the scene. We can do that now in about 12 to 15 minutes and have the cars removed and get even better quality of evidence collection for that as well. We can do the same thing for crime scenes as well. Instead of taking all sorts of pictures, we can utilize a drone to do it. We could fly outside of the area. We could fly inside the area as well. We can also use it for tactical operations for our SWAT team, as long as we have it written into the warrant that we're serving, so that we can provide overwatch, which basically means that we take the drone and we fly over the target site. And we're usually doing it early morning, and we have the capability to use thermal imaging to see if there's anybody around the house that would endanger the safety of the officers. Also, when they make entry into that location, if anybody flees from that area, we can help the units on scene. We can help them identify which direction of travel they took, and have kind of an eye in the sky, and it'd be very covert about that, as opposed to having a helicopter overhead, which would be very overt, make a lot of noise and alert the people in there, which would create an unsafe situation for them. Hazmat assessment, we can, if there's a traffic crash on like I-95 or on I-4 and a tractor trailer turns over, they're all placarded. They're mandated to be placarded by DOT. They'll have a number on the side of it. So we can see that from a couple miles out. We could zoom all the way in and we can see that placard and determine what, if there's any hazmat material on there. So police officers and firefighters don't walk into a cloud of chlorine or something like that. So we can keep them safe as well. What else can we do? Crowd monitoring. So really, for us here in Daytona Beach, the crowd monitoring is kind of one of the bigger deals that we have, just because of the large events that we had. For example, we just had the Daytona 500, and we had a very special visitor, President Trump, that came into town for the 500 as well. And I personally got a phone call from the aviation director of the United States Secret Service, wondering about our capabilities. It was an interesting 30-minute conversation that was out there, but to get a phone call directly from that office, basically from the president's office, was kind of unique and kind of shocking at the same time. But basically, we're talking about our abilities in terms of what drones we had and how we were going to use them, especially after the events that took place this summer with President Trump. Also, any type of counter UAS, or how do we, that's something else that we've kind of got involved with as well, is how do we prevent people from using drones nefariously? And there's a bunch of rules and regulations that are in place that people must follow to fly in specific airspace or to fly in general for that as well. So it's been interesting, and how fast the technology has moved, number one, but also our how we have morphed from basically using UAS to in all of those scenarios that I presented, but also now how we're also shifting over into the counter UAS to make sure that the people that are also flying drones in the airspace, making sure that they do it legally as well.
I think that's a lot to unpack. I mean, it definitely has a lot of advantages. I mean, and it's not just police force that's using it. We're seeing the military. If anybody, we're filming this the Monday post the 250th birthday of the Army. And if anybody watched the celebration for the Army, they saw that there was a unit that walked with their drones. So we know the military is using drones. We know internationally, people are using drones. We know that you can just go and buy it off of a store shelf. Obviously that one may not be able to do as much as something like you would see coming out of a police department or even the military. But I mean, there's a lot of advantages when it comes to, safety, time, evidence collection, and efficiencies. But are there ethical or privacy concerns that come up with them? And I ask that considering that there's quite a few things that have happened, I want to say even in the last year, where drones have been the center of conversation. We had towards the end of the previous presidency, the concerns with I'm going to say random at this point, random drones that people were seeing hovering in New Jersey and several other cities. We've recently seen with ongoing wars that are happening overseas, Israel's and Iran's attacks on each other using drones. We saw the attack that the Ukraine used on Russia with drones, but we've also seen where if it wasn't for a drone being able to see that heat signature, they wouldn't have found missing persons. So obviously there's always good and the bad, but when we look at the ethics or privacy concerns, are there overwhelming amounts of that when it comes to the drones?
That is a phenomenal question. And when we first started, that was one of the key questions that we had to address first. And if we go back to about 2013 or 14, somewhere in that time frame, Seattle Police Department tried to institute and implement a drone program, and they failed miserably. And it was partly their fault, but it wasn't all their fault. Number one, it was a new technology. And for everything that you just stated in regard to privacy, the community had privacy concerns about how the drone was going to be implemented. Was it going to be used to write tickets? Was it going to be used to search people's backyards? Was it going to be used to look into people's windows? Was it going to be used in conjunction with AI to take a look and find people's faces and run them through systems when there was not a legal stop? So all of those privacy concerns are legitimate. And what we did to address that at Daytona Beach Police Department is we held a media press conference. That was one of the first things that we did. We took all the drones up. We worked with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, who is the #1 aviation university in the world. They helped develop our UAS program itself. They helped train the pilots as well. So we made sure that we were with a reputable university that was able to provide professional training for those that were going to be operating the drones. We presented that to the public, along with standard operating procedures, which is a document on how we're going to use this, what we're going to do with the evidence. So basically, a drone, depending on the payload again, is collecting data. So we do the same thing on the ground, and we have protocols for that already set. So we just attach that, and we use the same protocols as we would for the air. So that was a key thing in the SOP as well. We had a safety management system, so to make sure that the drones that are flying are airworthy, to make sure that they're safe as well. And then we had a general maintenance manual, a GMM. So how often do we do maintenance on these things? So we had all the documentation of a professional aviation unit in place for that. That was one of the first things that we did. We had our pilots trained to the FAA Part 107 standard that was out there. So the federal regulations make sure that we're in compliance with it. We actually had to get a certificate of authorization that's now changed to a certificate of waiver, from a COA to a CAL, if you like acronyms. And that basically gave us permission to fly in the airspace that we operate in here within Daytona Beach. So we made sure that legally we were all covered. And then the whole concept of the media presentation was to address any concerns. Number one, we physically brought the drones to the presentation, to the media day, so that they can see what was going to be flying overhead. So there was no guesswork. So there was, we can't attach anything. These drones weigh anywhere from 2.5 to 11 pounds. So we're not really attaching anything that we could drop anything. The only thing that we are really capable of dropping is life preservers for those that are drowning off the beach. So it's a quicker response than sometimes the lifeguards in certain areas, where we can take off and drop a flotation device to someone as the lifeguards get out there. The second thing that kind of arose throughout the years was Florida State Statute 934.50. And it specifically talks about searches and seizures using a drone, which directly affects or directly answers your question about privacy. So we are not allowed as a police department here in the state of Florida to fly our drone and go take pictures of your backyard without a warrant. We're not allowed to issue citations based off of anything that we see in the air utilizing the drone. There are caveats. There are three large caveats to this surveillance statute that's there. But basically, the prohibited uses that we're not allowed to use a drone or gather evidence unless we have a credible threat from the Department of Homeland Security that basically says, hey, there's a terrorist event that is going to be there. If we get a search warrant, so as I mentioned before on those SWAT search warrant that we execute, at the bottom we'll write in that we're using UAS for the safety of everybody that's involved on that. And again, we're only targeting that house, which already has probable cause for us to go and conduct a search or apprehend a human being in there. The third caveat is a little bit more, I would say, lax. But again, it allows us the opportunity to go out there and collect evidence. So it basically says that if the law enforcement officers possess a reasonable suspicion that under particular circumstances, swift action is needed to prevent imminent danger to life or serious damage to property, or to forestall the imminent escape of the suspect, or the destruction of evidence, or to achieve purposes including but not limited to facilitating for the search of a missing person. That one was in there, and there's several other ones that are that I'm not going to go through, but that are attached to that, like helping the fire department as well. We've done that on several occasions as well. With our drone and the thermal capability, we're able to identify hot spots in the fire that you would normally not be able to see from the ground level. And we have several videos where you can see where the firefighters are putting the water on the fire, but they're not really hitting the hot spot. And the second the battalion chief makes that adjustment, they get quicker control of that fire, which was really impressive the first time that we did it. We helped reduce them fighting the fire by a couple of hours, and on top of saving water and saving the other surrounding structures that were there as well. So there are rules, regulations, and laws that are in place that dictate when and how we can do that, so we can secure the privacy of those within the community itself.
So I happen to know that your other area of expertise is body-worn cameras. And so I kind of have a weird question that I do want to ask you about in consideration to both body-worn cameras and drones. There are a lot of YouTubers that use drones to help them film. They have like something that they attach to themselves, so it kind of like follows as if there was an invisible tether. Do you see drones ever replacing or being added in addition to body-worn cameras in certain circumstances?
Great question. So I think that really is a great question, because that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. And ironically enough, they're looking at systems now that they have a drone attached to the car, basically in a box. And as the officer gets out, you can wear something on your uniform. The sports people wear a device on their wrist, and it gives out a frequency, and the drone can follow them. They can either follow them or get ahead of them, and they have the ability not to crash into things with the software that's around them. It's really, really cool, especially if you're on a bicycle, if you're doing like mountain biking or skiing. You'll see that a lot with that. But for police officers, the thought process is basically as soon as the officer makes a traffic stop or gets out, that drone can deploy and get a higher point of view for that traffic stop or for that encounter that is outside. So that is technology that is out there that can be utilized. Do I think it's going to be here within the next year or two? I don't know about what the benefit would be, especially with body-worn cameras, with everybody having a Ring camera, with all the CCTV that's out there. It's an extra layer of defense, I would say, or an extra set of eyes that's out there. But they do currently have a program called DFR, which is a Drone First Responder. And that is a different scenario. It's not attached to the car. So what they have done is they have located some of the, so basically fire stations are located in critical points of each city, and they serve a certain amount of people that are there. And what they have done is they've taken drones and put them usually on top of fire stations, because there's more fire stations than police stations. And what happens is that the police department in an office, they can launch that drone. So as soon as a call is received by 911, that if it's a hot call, meaning that there might be a gun involved or there's some violence, what can happen is that the call comes in from the 911 dispatch, it gets put up on the screen, the coordinates get loaded into the drone goes and flies, automatically has eyes on the situation before the police officer arrives. and a police officer can receive that footage through the computer to see what they're rolling up on. So usually what happens if you're driving lights and sirens, that may make people flee. So if you show up and somebody's leaving out the back door, that drone will capture that, and that suspect has a less likely chance of getting away. There have been scenarios where people have been standing outside with knives or guns, and the officer will not pull up directly in front of the house. Not that they're supposed to anyway, but sometimes it just happens. So it gives more information for the officer who's arriving on scene, so that it's a potential use in the way you mentioned it in terms of, and that's currently out there right now being utilized by some agencies. There's 18,000 law enforcement agencies out there, and I think there's about between 6,000 and 7,000 agencies currently utilizing drones right now. So we're almost at that 50% mark where drones are being utilized. You have to remember, not every agency is as advanced as the next one. So
that makes sense. As we look at, upcoming graduates who are very interested in this field. So I guess this is more of a question for the professor side in you. But what kind of training and skills does it take for someone to effectively and legally operate drones when we look at that criminal justice setting?
Another phenomenal question. So I changed it from great to phenomenal. So the key things, if you're looking for someone to join a UAS unit, number one, it helps if they have an aviation background, because what you're truly asking, and this is one of the things that I did my doctoral project on, was the lack of training for police officers to handle a call about somebody flying a drone. That's number one. But to get to your question, to operate a drone, it's beneficial if you have some sort of aviation background. Why? Because you're talking about something completely different than law enforcement or the criminal justice field. You are talking about, and my other background and my bachelor's and my master's, one of my master's is in aeronautical science, and I'm a commercial pilot as well. So I have that aviation background. So I understand the aviation world, flying in it for many, many, many hours. Being a pilot and everything else. But to get your FAR Part 107 certificate to fly, which is basically like a driver's license, for you to be able to fly a drone, it has everything to do with aviation. So what kind of airspace are you in? What are the rules and regulations or the federal aviation regulations that are out there? There's some good training programs that are out there. Probably takes the average police officer anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to absorb all that knowledge. Then you have to go to an FAA testing center where you're allowed to bring absolutely nothing in. Like I even have to take off my Apple Watch because I don't want you cheating. And then you take a test, and then you either when you pass that test, then you have your certificate to fly. Then you have to have authorization to fly in the airspace if needed. And then you have to register your aircraft as well. And the new thing, the other requirement is that you have to have remote ID. Remote ID is basically an electronic license plate that is either embedded in the software of the drone, or I thought I had one here, or you can attach it to the drone itself, and it emits a radio frequency to let other people know that you're in the area. Because that was one of the big things, one of the big issues that we had, especially during Bike Week, is that when we went to go launch our drone, we would look up and see another drone in the airspace. So we didn't know what their intent was, not saying that they were nefarious, but we didn't know which way they were going to go, because there's no roads in the sky for drones. There's roads in the sky for airplanes, but not for drones. And so that kind of became a complex thing. So that's why they created this RID, or remote identification. So really the four things that you need to fly: first, you have to study, take the test to get your 107 certificate. You need to have your aircraft registered with the FAA. You also have to have authorization to fly in the airspace if necessary. That depends on your location. That can change. And then the last thing is remote ID. So those four things are there to do that. You have to have consistent training as well throughout. So how do you handle a search and rescue? What's the procedure that you're going to do that? How are you going to handle a fire call? How close can you get to a fire before your payload melts? Some people learn that the hard way. So a lot of it, since the technology is so new, there's a lot of trial and error about some of that stuff now. We've had many deployments, so our knowledge base has expanded significantly. But how do you do barricaded subject in a vehicle, which we have come and encountered? People that are mentally ill or not feeling good today, and they're threatening to commit suicide. They have a gun in the car. How do you fly a drone in there? Whether you're going to use it as a distractor or you're trying to get more information so you can contact other people that can come in and help. So how do you fly all of those specific mission sets? How to use the technology, such as Pix4D is the name of a piece of software that's out there that will help you do the 3D ortho mosaics for the crime scene. And basically what it is the 3D picture, and it takes 2D pictures and it stitches them together. And then when you can pick it up in the program, you can move it all the way around. The other cool part is that you can do measurements to like the centimeter. So you can have really, really accurate 3D images, which is good for evidence. And it's also good for presentations in the courtroom for juries, because they watch TV and they see it and they expect it. And if they don't have it and they see a bunch of dots on the paper, they're going, this doesn't make sense. We've got technology that can do better than that. So having a computer background as well, and the understanding of computer technology and how certain software works is kind of key and critical for the types of skills and training that you need to embark on to be a professional UAS operator for the criminal justice field.
Before I ask you my final question, I want to ask you a little bit about your unit. I understand there's certain things you can't talk about due to ongoing active cases or even cases that are closed that still have things tied around it that you may not be able to speak on. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that your unit has been doing or has done?
Great question. So I think so one of the pinnacle points for us, I call it the grenade call here in Daytona Beach. And I got to work with Professor Aaron Koffer with cybersecurity. He also teaches here at Kaiser University. And he was the supervisor for the drone program. And I will never forget it. It was a Saturday morning. It was beautiful out. It was probably about 8:30 in the morning. I was having my cup of coffee and I was going to go coach hockey. And I was all excited for the day. And I get a phone call from Professor Aaron Koffer. And he said, he never calls me. So I didn't know if I was getting fired or if it was the end of the world. And it was part two. And it was pretty much the quote unquote end of the world for us. So long story short, what happened was there was he called me and said that he needed my assistance because we had a call out and the SWAT team was called out. Everybody was called out. And there was a man in a hotel with a grenade with possibly other explosives. And again, I was just waking up, enjoying my cup of coffee. So I got dressed and ran over to the location, and it was right on the beach side. And so I arrived, and he was either already flying or getting ready to fly the mission. And what happened was early in the morning, there was a gentleman from New Jersey that got into an argument downstairs in the lobby. Come to find out, he was intoxicated and on narcotics. And he made a statement to security saying that he was going to blow up the entire place and he had a grenade. He had other explosives and he went back up to his room, which was on the 5th floor. So we show up, the SWAT team surrounds. So we have to take care of everybody. We have to evacuate the building for obvious reasons. And then we have to try to get eyes on inside the hotel room. So we had the floor locked down. We had pretty much two separate, we had two SWAT teams, or not two SWAT teams, but we had our SWAT team divided, where the only way he could get out is if he wanted to depart the 5th floor from the balcony, which would not be a smart move. So we were able, Professor Aaron Koffer was actually flying. I was the VO, or the visual observer. So I was handling the radio communications. I was handling everything, and all, I say all, but Professor Aaron Koffer was the pilot, and the reason why he wanted me there was because the winds were quite high. They were about 20 to 25 knots, which is about 28 miles per hour. So we had our bigger aircraft out there that could see, that had excellent zoom capabilities so that we could see inside the window. This is a time, this meets one of those exigent circumstances where we need to see if he's got any bombs in there to make sure that everybody was safe. So we were able to see inside the window and the sliding glass window. This guy rearranged all the furniture, meaning that he threw it on the pool deck and everything inside was completely upside down in there. But we were able to utilize a tactic where we kept calling the room and he was on a landline, so we knew where he was standing in case we had to make entry into the room. So that kind of confined him within the room as opposed to him hiding. So that was one thing that was kind of critical, because when we did that, he was standing up against the window. His back was towards the window. And in his right hand, he had we were able to zoom in. We could see the grenade in his hand. But because of my training experience, I noticed that at the bottom of the grenade, that it was hollowed out and didn't have a charge in it. So it was one of those things that you would have on your desk as a piece of art, which would be a grenade. So I looked at it, showed that picture to the bomb squad. They confirmed that it was most likely not a live grenade at that point. So that changed our tactics. So instead of snipers being there, we moved our entry team in. The guy, this was over a 5-6 hour period, by the way. He started getting thirsty, so all he wanted was a Coca-Cola. So once we got that information about the grenade, we gave that to the hostage negotiation team, who then sent detectives out to 2 local gun stores that would potentially sell that stuff. We had his name, we had his date of birth from his car, and we were able to get those detectives over to those stores. And it just happens that the day before, he bought one of those fake grenades. And so we were now really confident that it did not have a charge in it, especially to the statements that he was making and everything else. So that really kind of changed our tactics in terms of how we're going to handle this. So he's asking for a Coke. So for $1.25, we put a Coke out on the front door. He came out. He didn't have anything in his hands. Wound up tasing him and took him into custody without any further incident. So I now have to rush and try to get back to the bus. I had to call them up. I'm like, "Hey, I'm coming. Just had a little hiccup here. I didn't wake up late, but I'll tell you the story when I get there." And I started getting these texts and from the SWAT people and from the snipers. And these were unsolicited texts. And the text basically said, the drone saved this guy's life, because if he would have came out with that grenade, he wouldn't be here anymore. So I got about 4 of those from people that were super impressed with the drone's capabilities. And we couldn't see in the window across the way because of the way the balcony was angled at a 45-degree. So everybody had a beach view, is what they called it. So the only way we could see in the window was with the drone. And due to its elevation, we couldn't see from the ground. So really, everything worked out. Number one, that guy will spend a very long time in prison. But he's alive today because of the drone program, because that would have definitely turned out to be something different if we couldn't verify that guy was not holding that grenade at that point in time, and we could verify through paperwork and sending our detectives out to the stores to do that. So that's probably one of our biggest cases. That's my proudest case. That basically validated the entire UAS unit itself, because not only did we save a life that day, meaning the subject's life that day, but to me, more importantly, we saved the snipers or team member from having to take that shot and have to live with that moment of taking a human life. And no officer ever wants to do that. If we have to, we will, but we don't want to do that, because that changes you as a person for the remainder of your life. And all the hard work and dedication that we put in into the unit itself paid off that day, and we've had several successes thereafter, but not as big as that one for that validation of the program itself by saving the lives and not changing the lives of the police officers that were involved. And we had a safe outcome to a very, very dangerous situation.
That's amazing, and thank you for sharing that case with us. before we let you go, because this has been very interesting conversation, and I'm glad we can include it with our June conversations in criminal justice. Where do you see this technology going and evolving, and what impact do you think it might have on the future, the justice system?
So as I mentioned before, I think the DFR, or the drone first responder, is going to be the next logical step. And again, we will see. So drones are going to be responding to calls. They already have been in very in localized areas. I would say a handful out of the 18,000 agencies have DFR, or drone first responder. So getting that information, and again, it's critical to have that intelligence, that information, so that people that are either on scene or arriving on scene can make safe tactical decisions for themselves and for those subjects that are causing the scene itself. So having that actionable intelligence is critical to being successful. That's one thing. It's overseas in the military realm. They don't have the rules and regulations that they have to abide by here. So we're a little bit more restricted. So there is swarming technology, which we've seen. So you may have seen it. We actually had a case here in Orlando where I think a 6-year-old got hurt. But swarm technology, where they do now, instead of doing fireworks, they do drone shows. These drones, 200 or 1,000 drones go up in the swarm technology. And basically what they do is they have sensors on all the sides of the drone, and all they care about is where they are in relation to the drone next to them. And there's one computer program that controls all of that. And they go into different positions, they don't crash into each other, and they form, dragons, they form, the sun, whatever imagery that they like, they can do that. But swarming technology can be utilized, in law enforcement as well. AI integration. And this, again, this kind of gets into that surveillance side, which we don't want to do. So my rule of thumb is that if I'm allowed to be there as a police officer, I'm allowed to be there with a drone. If I have authority as a police officer to be in that location, then my drone has the authority to be there as well, since it's an extension of me. That's a rough way of putting it. But the surveillance side of it, with AI. So for example, if I want to go take a look at Heather's pattern of life. So Heather wakes up we'll give you a good time, 6 o'clock in the morning, and she has her cup of coffee, or she's going to go someplace. She's going to go to the gym before work or wherever she goes. And then she stops at 7-Eleven. Then she goes here, picks up a dry cleaning. She gets to work, and on the way home, she does this. And if every single human being has a pattern of life. Now, if I'm looking for you and I have this AI integration, so all I have to do is type in and say, hey, look for license plate ABC 123. And now this drone's got the pattern of life, flies the normal route, finds you, and now turns around, looks inside into the driver's window, sees your face, compares it to your driver's license. That is starting to get into some scary stuff in terms of being able to surveil people and find people. We can already do that with a lot of the LPRs, or the license plate readers that are out on the street. So we know if you're pinging the same LPR every day and stuff like that. So it's there, but now if we attach it to a drone side, that could be something, again, that starts to infringe on the public privacy there. So I'm very happy in terms of where we're at with the use of UAS. Again, it's not a solution. It's a tool to help, because that's all it is a tool. The aircraft provides that payload, a different point of view, a bird's eye point of view for the scenario that you're presented with. The second you start to get outside that scope is when the infringement of rights can occur. And I'm not a proponent of that at all. Again, it goes back to, okay, are we in that spot for a reason? Do we have authority to be there as police officers? And will this drone help our mission to keep everybody safe? If you follow those three things, then you're not going to be infringing on people's rights. We have gotten phone calls from administration that asked us to do things, and I said, no, we cannot do that. And it's not because they were being nefarious. It was because they just didn't know the rules and regulations. And yes, they're great ideas, but no, we need a warrant for that. No, we need to do this first. No, we can't do that because of this. So The operators are the ones that are really in control in terms of determining kind of what's next for the usage of UAS in contemporary times. You've got swarm technology, you've got real-time analytics, you've got these drones that can get insanely small, like the size of a bee. And what are we going to do with those? So you start thinking about overseas, that's good for there, but not for over here. And the other thing that needs to happen first before before the true explosion of UAS happens is beyond visual line of sight needs to be permanently appended to the FAR, meaning that we can fly beyond visual line of sight, so we don't have to see the aircraft anymore, so that we can control it, because that's one of the parameters or one of the constrictions that we have right now, is that we have to be able to see the drone under the FAR definition for that. So it can't be on our line of sight. So that usually is about 3/4 of a mile to a mile away, depending on the size of the aircraft. But now you have to remember these drones can fly 5-10 miles away. So once that beyond visual line of sight rule comes in, that will reach out our range for us, which is a good thing. And then other things that have to happen is court case law has to happen as well. So the courts really need to start making some decisions on these privacy issues that are out there. You know, what altitude, if any, would violate the curtilage of somebody's property. So the problem is that when you're on the ground, you're in the state. The second that you take off and you're off the ground, you're in the federal aviation airspace, and that's so both things are controlled by. So when you're on the ground, it's state statute. As soon as you leave the ground, you're in federal airspace, controlled by the federal regulations that are up there and that are out there as well. So there needs to be some delineation. The case law needs to move up. Cases need to move through so that we can have more of a clear and concise, concise edification of what the rules are, what we can truly enforce. And the other side, the other involving impact is definitely 110% going to be counter UAS. So we are primed for what's happening over in Ukraine and Russia right now to come over here and happen as a terrorist attack. My biggest fear is we've got about 150,000 on the front stretch of the Daytona 500, and all you have to do is take a drone, drop baby powder. You don't even have to have some chemical. Just drop baby powder on the crowd, and you have 150,000 people trying to flee, and you're gonna have a crisis. So what I'm saying is not, it's not super secret. It's just a thought process. Think of the worst thing that you can do with it, and we're seeing it take place right now overseas. We have to be empowered with legislation, and I do teach people how to counter that stuff and how to interview those that are out there. To give you an example, our department has stopped over 300 people who have been flying drones. And we have encountered only one person who had all of that legal paperwork, one of those 4 documents that I talked about prior. Only one person was committing a legal flight. So clear education needs to be done for law enforcement, how to enforce the law, and also for those who are operating their drones as well. That's kind of that to me really is the next step. How do we ensure that the public is properly educated and law enforcement is properly educated to enforce those the laws that they currently have on the books?
I definitely think conversations like this will help with that too, making people more aware of the ins and outs. But you also brought up a good point, that I think it would be improper of me not to ask you this last question. We've seen, like you mentioned, current events overseas, but we also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, saw certain cities throughout the U.S. where they had these unknown drones flying over. Were they government? Were they not? Were they private individuals? But even so, there are those with, nefarious purposes who might be, like taking a peeking Tom to a new level, right? Because now they have this technology and it's not as obvious what they're doing. What is your advice to the public on them being able to know, like, okay, well, this is the police deploying their drone for safety purposes versus Joe Schmo or even an 8-year-old kid who got one for Christmas and somehow figured how to get it off the ground without breaking a television or terrifying a dog? I'm not speaking from personal experience, but I'm just saying those are real world situations. Like, what should the public do, in those moments? Like, how would I, myself handle a situation like that?
So if you encounter a drone as part of the public, I would just recommend calling the police, number one, and then just being a very good observer. Don't get involved, number one. If you can take a picture of the drone, take a picture of the thing taking a picture of you, right? So that's kind of what it is. And then you have the opportunity to contact the FAA. It's called the FSDO, Flight Standards District Office, that you can call. You can look up the number for your area, and then you can call them online, or you can send to the government, to the FAA. You can send an email to them as well saying, hey, on this date and this time, this is what happened. This is the drone. I called the police, have them fill out a report. And that's pretty much where you're at this point, because a lack of rules and regulations that are out there. Here in the state of Florida, we're lucky that we have Florida State Statute 860.13, where it's a careless or reckless flying of an aircraft. That's a whole another 2-hour event that I can explain. But we have the ability to go up to people since that crime is taking place on the ground itself, to stop that person and deal with them. In other states, those police officers don't have that luxury. There's something called LEAP, the Law Enforcement Assistance Program. So if you're a law enforcement officer, find your LEAP agent. There's about 17 throughout the country, so they're short of 50, so there's not one per state. Quick math, I'm good. But you contact that. So if you're in law enforcement, you contact your LEAP agent. You file the report with them, and then we'll give you guidance on what to do. If you're just a citizen, definitely file a police report. If you try to take pictures of the drone itself, and if you find one that fell down or whatever, don't touch it. You don't know what's attached to it. There should be a registration number that is permanently affixed on the outside. Try to take a picture of that if you can. If not, call the police and let them come and handle that. And they will handle that like a piece of technology. For that, there's protocols for us as police departments. If it's being used in a crime, we treat it the same way as we do a cell phone. We do a search warrant to get the telemetry off of it. And there's a process for that as well. But overall, unfortunately, police departments do not have detection devices, counter UAS detection devices. This is some of the stuff that's being talked about in the executive orders from the president today, trying to get this technology up and running. The concept of remote ID that I talked about previously, those electronic license plate, they were, when it was initially proposed, you were supposed to have cell phone tower service. So basically what would happen is that remote ID would ping a cell phone tower that would go into the internet, and it would let everybody know where you are. But the drone operators were concerned about their privacy while flying, and that kind of got kicked back. Also, if you're flying in Montana, you probably won't be able to fly a drone because there's not too many cell phone towers out there. So good intent, good idea, poor execution. So now it emits on Bluetooth only, so that's only a couple hundred yards. We have done research projects where you will not be able to see the drones near area. There is an app, if you give me 1 second. It's called Drone Scanner. And it works better on Android devices than on Apple or iOS. So you can download Drone Scanner if you see a drone above you, and it can tell you where the drone's at. And if you want to screen record that and show that to the police as well, it's got telemetry on there. That is coming from that remote ID. But that drone's got to be pretty close for your phone to pick it up, just FYI. But that is another tool that you can use to help identify the drone, where it's going and where it took off from as well. So my suggestion would be download the app prior, obviously. Then if you see one, you can open it up. You don't need a search warrant because it's admitting into the public. That was the concept. And then I would screen record that, and then you could see where the drone goes and where it can land. And then the police officer can start their investigation from there.
Thank you. That's good information, I think, for all of us to know to handle in those situations. Because I think as we see technology advance, I think we're going to see more and more of the drones, even from personal uses. I mean, I think they were like a hotspot this year at Christmas. My son got 3. So
yeah, the Jersey incident kind of really put it at the forefront with all the drones flying over. And then basically what happened was that everybody started to fly their own drones. outside, which created even more chaos. And ultimately, it was and this was kind of the counterpoint to the case of remote ID. It was super simple. It was like, all right, if all these drones are supposed to have remote ID, we're supposed to be able to tell. And that's the failure of remote ID, is that for a multitude of reasons. Number one, it was mostly military aircraft that were flying, military drones that were flying from a test center that was located in Jersey. So they were kind of hush hush about it. And since they were hush hush, it tends to happen with the public. It becomes a conspiracy theory and everything else. And we still don't have the full information because it's a secret. What they were testing is secretive from that. And I got that from a good source. And it wasn't anything against the public. It was just something they were testing. And what happens is it gets shown, if you see the same thing happening in the same area over and over, there's no information about it when there should be information about it, and there should be transparency. Then the conspiracy theory starts. Last quick example, we got a call from JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force. We got a call from the FBI to go up to Putnam County, one of the counties, P or a P. We got called up. They had a massive problem with a drone flying over the electrical power plant that was up there. They serve 1.2 million people in the state of Florida. That's a lot of people, and they had them flying over for 5 days. So they gave us a call to run carrying UAS up there as well. Unfortunately, they called us on the 7th day, and it was a thunderstorm. And sitting up 300 feet on electrical in a thunderstorm with on a metal tower at an electrical plant was terrifying. I was probably the most scared I've ever been in my entire life, walking on catwalks at 300 feet in the air. I almost started crying. I totally admit that it was terrifying. But once we got up there and we got set up, the storm kept them out. The electricity everything kept them out. So we weren't able to capture them that night. So moral of the story is call us a little bit earlier so that we can help. But we get those calls and we get those types of incidents. The same stuff from the Secret Service with the Trump visit. We had the federal air marshals, we had the TSA, we had all sorts of three-letter agencies here asking and talking about drones. So the technology here and the use for it is just started.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Galante, and thank you so much for what you do with your unit and the Daytona Police Department in trying to keep the public safe. And also the education that you provide to our students. So thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And if you all have enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow all throughout the month of June as we explore some relevant conversations within the criminal justice system. And we hope to catch you on the next one.
Thank you for journeying with us today on Kaiser Voices, the Story of Success. As we close this chapter, remember, every story has its next page.